Did you press the button?
No.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Fabulous. Okay, welcome anyone who is watching this video live. We are live from the Assembly Rooms Theatre, Durham Student Theatre, Experience Durham and Durham University Alumni Network. So thank you for joining in if you are here with us today at 3 o'clock on a lovely Friday afternoon. Slightly overcast here, apparently it's lovely in London. And I'm with us today with the most fantastic Arthur Bostrom, who thank you so much for joining us. Really excited to have you here. How are you doing, my good man?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for that lovely introduction. This is great. So people are signed on. They're there. Are they?
We hope so. We hope we are live to the masses right now, and I will hopefully be able to let you know how many people as we go on. A kind of little statistic pops up.
But that's how I am. I'm absolutely fine, thanks.
Yeah.
Considering weird situation we're all in at the moment.
It is very strange. I think we're living in unusual times. I think now is probably a fantastic time to keep a diary of what's going on.
Good point. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So what is keeping you sane in quarantine? Is there anything that you've been up to?
Yeah, I have. I've been sort of doing a lot of things that I've been putting off because there's no excuse to do them. Not to do what it is, there's still loads of things, but doing lots of things, actually doing them and feeling quite good about that. But I have actually, for the first couple of weeks, been doing a great deal of reading because I'm not working at the moment. I mean, I might do voiceover work or something like that can come through, but apart from that, no. So I've been doing a lot of reading, and I mean, I've got two things stacked up ready to read. I mean, one was a War and Peace. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, really, isn't it?
But poem of a book as well.
Yeah, heaven knows we've got the time. But the thing is, I was given that as the book as a prize for my school when I was 18. I'm now 65 and I've not read it. And I found the book, you know, wherever I've lived, that book is gone. You know, I just like, it's about time I read this. So I'm going to go through that. And also the other one, which everybody always mentions, is somebody I know read recently, which is Middlemarch, which is very long too. And so I'm going to read that because I've got that ready. So that could see me through the next month, to be honest.
Next month for sure.
See me right to the end of all this, I don't know. But I think it would be a great achievement because, I mean, goodness knows it's time I got round to it. So I hope it's worth it. And also the other thing, in the evenings, I've been going through pretty well all the James Bond films, which I've got in a big you know, pack of DVD box set. So, and realizing just how similar they all are. The same actors turn up in different roles. It's really odd. Like, have him again, which is very confusing. Is that you were playing a nice guy before, and now you're playing this bad guy going on. You know, it's really weird. And or you know, and after a while you think, oh, another downhill skiing sequence. Here we go again. It's about 7 or 8, and they're all the same. Lots of machine gun fire that never really reaches them, or just sort of all the shooting goes just behind them. You know. So anyway,
recurring sound effects, castle lightning, and all of that.
Yeah, you know? exactly. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So, next question: have you got any interesting views from your window, or is there anything going on?
Well, I live on the Liverpool waterfront, so it looks pristine. I mean, I can take you and look at it if you want, and we could try that.
We could see if we can go there.
See if you can see what I'm seeing or what I will be seeing. Hold on, this shouldn't be difficult to do. Famous last words. Can you see this behind me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there we are, you see. So there's the Liverpool. Well, there's about 3 people walking around, whereas normally there'd be about 100. So that's the weird thing I'm seeing from my window. Hold on, I just need to close the door.
I love that little noise. It's like I feel like I'm in a sitcom when someone enters through the door with the ding.
Oh no, it's my email thing, so I'm just going to switch it off.
Right. It kind of corresponded at the same time as you open the door.
Bong. Yes. Yeah, so it's very odd, but I mean, other people have been talking about
Mm.
strangeness of things like behavior of birds. I mean, we get, obviously, I'm right by the Mersey estuary, and a lot of seagulls around, but they don't normally fly around our building because there's people around, and unless there's a quiet bit. Well, I've just noticed far more birds around, and they're more adventurous, and they're coming in, and so it's very interesting. So yeah, these are, as we've said, odd times, but nature is kind of like, I mean, it's not actually thinking, what's happened to all those people that are normally around here? It's just going, well, this seems like a good idea to be outside and, feeding and doing something.
Yeah, I think it's probably only the seagulls that are missing all the litter from all the people. Apart from that, I think nature's probably quite grateful for a break.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, interesting. So I've got a few just fun questions, things that people might want to know, but if anyone is watching out there, you are welcome to kind of post any messages onto the chat or add as a comment, and we'll do our best to kind of field them and ask them if we can. So do feel free to fire away if you have any questions you'd like to ask. But obviously, Arthur, most people will know you for your very, very famous role of Officer Crabtree, and all of his wonderful glory. Is there anything that we might not know about that character, or we might not know about you as kind of in that role?
The character, I suppose, the up-to-date news about that character is I've written book written by him, so I would regard him as my alter ego. So I got around to writing a book a couple of years ago called Good Morning France, Officer Crabtree's French Frosberg. So it's a phrase book for people that want to go to France. Yeah, the timing couldn't have been worse just before Brexit, but there we are. I mean, and lockdown to that, or Lickdoon, as he would call that. And but that's what it is, and it's a whole phrase book written in Crabtree French, most of which is made up by me because there was only a limited amount I used in the series. So that's one thing. I mean, there's other things that you probably, people don't know about me, about, outside my acting stuff. I do sort of other things, and I've mentioned when I do voiceover work, and sort of trying to get, I've written a couple of novels, neither of which have been published, but anyway, I'm persevering with that, particularly at this time too. Get on with that. But I also, for a long while, was doing coaching work, and then I kind of packed it in because there wasn't time. And I'm going back to that recently. I've done, that came out of, I was a Samaritans volunteer for a long time, and actually the questioning process is quite similar. The way that you talk online on the phone to people that ring into Samaritans, you talk a lot of open questions and things like that. Somebody said, "Oh, you'd be a good coach," and I went, "Really? What's that?" So anyway, it very interesting because it's something I love doing as well, almost as much, if not more, in some ways as acting. So I'm probably going to spend a lot more time doing that as I get older now, because I've been an actor for a long time now, and it's a tough profession or something. So I just think a change is as good as a rest, really, with that. So that's couple of things you didn't know about me.
No, absolutely. I did not know that either. I think something I found, because I know you've got an Internet Movie Database page, is that you're fluent in French. Because obviously I know you wrote that phrase book. I think that's kind of ironic.
I certainly was. I just don't use it enough now. I mean, if I was given a piece of French to read, I know, it would sound pretty good, I think. But, I actually won prizes at school for spoken French, which seems sort of ironic. And in 1985, when I got a low and went to it, my French masters were still, some of them were still teaching at the school where I was, and they got quite a bit of flack about that when I started to appear. But, I mean, it does seem ironic, but there we are. Yeah.
And also, I know geography fellow as well.
Yeah, I've done a lot.
You studied geography at Durham.
I studied geography at Durham, yeah, and yeah, it's sort of interesting that because I've never lost my interest in the subject, and that geography at Durham was the course, and I think it still is to a certain extent. I think it's still somewhere like third in the world, courses for that. I mean, it was brilliant, but they really teach you how to look at and interpret the landscape, so, but of course, as an actor, it really honed my observation, skills in terms of that, because you have to be I've always been somebody who's like looking at people watching and things like that. You've got to be that kind of person, otherwise you've got no ideas about how to put a character together if you haven't observed people. But so it's the landscape, but also people and things like, I find it fascinating, the perception of things. All this problem that we have with flooding at the moment, with people and homes being built on floodplains. This to me, it's just like, it's called a floodplain, guys. It's like this should really be, and that was just pretty well unheard of, back when I was doing Geography at Durham. And you see in old villages and towns and stuff, you'll see hints in the way streets or little side streets are named, or there'll be one called Water Lane or something like that, or River Road or something. The hint is in the name. It's like, then maybe you're going to have a think about that. But I don't. I think a lot of people just aren't noticing things like that now, and I would like to. If I'm trying to get back, so it's back to your question. I'm trying to get back into geography as well. It's too many, juggling sticks in the air at once, but I'd like to make programs about things to do with that now. I'd love to do that, some presenting stuff. I've done some presentation of programs on Radio 4, which I loved. I've not yet done a TV presenter's job, so
that's on a bucket list of things to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
What kind of TV? Would it be a kind of game show of Crystal?
No. I would like to do
a documentary kind of.
A documentary style, really, particularly taking people into the landscape and showing them how to interpret the landscape. What is that? What's that called? Why is this landscape like it is? That sort of thing. Those are the things that fascinated me when I was doing it, and if I can find a way of doing it so that lets other people in. I think of maybe when people are out walking, they'll keep their eyes open more. That's the idea, and actually ask those questions themselves, or know what, why is this town set up here and not further down the coast, or why is blah blah blah. There's reasons for things. Very interesting stuff to me, anyway.
No, I think it is. I think you're right in people not thinking about it and should think about it.
Well, it's not putting people down. It's just I think maybe it's just not taught that way now. Anyway, there we are.
We've just had a question in, actually, if you fancy answering it. So, it works. Which is from Carol Walker. Thank you very much, Carol. Saying, where was the place to be when you were a student at Durham?
Where was the place to be? Well, for one thing, I was there from 1974 to 77. And whilst, the centre of, I was at Chad's, so, you look at the front of Chad's and it's like nothing has changed because you're opposite the cathedral and, and the Bailey and all of that. So it looks the same, but there were almost no restaurants at all. I think there was a Chinese takeaway and an Italian. That was about it, really. There really wasn't, the restaurant boom and cafe boom. So strangely enough, there was, when I was first invited back to Durham, I think just as the internet age was coming in, and somebody must have done a search, somebody at Chad's had done a search of people that had been there or something, and my name came up. So I was invited up, I can't remember what year it was, but it was early on. It was the first time I'd been back to Durham to my college, and it was for Chad's Day and all of that. So, and it was a really wonderful day, and I was with a group of students, and they had a formal dinner. We went to the bar. We went, and then the bar was closing, and then somebody said, "Well, let's," I said, "Well, I don't want to go to bed yet. Is there anywhere else we could go?" And somebody said, "Well, we could always go to Clute." And I went, Clute, cannot still be open because I mean that for one thing is named after a movie in the early 1970s, and that was current when I was there. You know, it's a Jane Fonda movie, and Jane Fonda was young then; she's 81 now. You know, I mean, it's just I just roared with laughter. I said, you know, and but there it was. So we actually went there, and it was the one and only time I'd been because, you know, I just never used to think about going out to places like that. You'd go to another college's bar or you'd go to the pub. So I used to go to, there's a pub on next to Elvet Riverside. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, that was that.
Signets?
Wasn't that? No, it was opposite the Three Tons. And anyway, okay. I could take someone there, but I mean, it did a very good pint, and we used to go to the bar at the back. But you know, that was sort of Chad's that is local because it was quite easy to get to. But apart from that, there wasn't really much to do. So that was a very long answer to your question.
No, it's a very interesting one. Very interesting.
Yeah, but a good question, yeah. And but now, I mean, there's just so much more going on in Durham. Every time I go back, I just think, gosh, you've got loads more to do.
Rather spoiled now, some of the students in that sense. They've got plenty of places to go out.
It's still got charm. It's still terrific. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's fascinating talking to you, speaking as someone who grew up watching the show and grew up with my mum every morning would go, good morning. Every time I'd walk in the room, that would be what I would be greeted with. To this day, she was, you know, so shout out to Jill Barton in Guernsey.
Real.
But I mean, obviously, you talked a little bit about all your other work as well that you've done and your kind of novels you've written and your life as a coach. What kind of particular moments are you most proud of?
Oh, right. I would say that I followed through on my ambition to become a professional actor. And I mean, it didn't come, you know, I credit Durham and also my school in that process. But I came from a town, Rugby in Warwickshire. There was nobody there in either my background or people that we knew that were professional actors. So, and we didn't used to go to a theatre, you know, we didn't used to go when I was a kid. It wasn't something my family did. And it wasn't until I did school plays and people started to, you know, compliment me and say that I was rather good, which was very nice because at last I'd found something I could do. Well, I wasn't a sporty person particularly, all of that. So that was the one thing that I seemed to rise to the top of the tree. And then at Durham, I was nervous immediately. It was a year. I didn't do anything my first year. And then I got involved with the review company through a connection at Chad's because they pretty well were half of the review company, people from Chad's, and they'd seen me do a sketch and invited me. And so it was luck, but I'd sort of put myself in the right place. But then, so it was the end of my second year. I mean, a year now seems to go in no time at all, but it was filled with so much stuff when you're at Durham doing so many different things. So at the end of my second year, I'd done an awful lot of theatre, both in Durham and also twice at the Edinburgh Festival as well with the university company. So, and built up a kind of head of steam, and enough people were saying, well, you know, you're good enough to do this. So it wasn't until my third year at Durham that I decided to, you know, walk off the cliff and do that. And, you know, and it kind of shocked my parents. But once I got invited, once I got into a drama school, I did a 1-year postgrad course because, you know, I'd been a student for 3 years. So, but I needed to get a professional head. But they'd said, you know, well, if you get into drama school, then we'll support you, which they did, which was amazing, actually, because, as I said, we had no contact. It must have been quite scary for them. There was them thinking, oh, we've got a son with a university degree from Durham, and now he's going off to do this, you know. But it worked up, and it's tough as anything, and it's even tougher now. You know, there's far less work, really, in many ways, and far more people trying to do it. So. And for the first few years, I worked every now and then. I got my first job very, very quickly. But then afterwards, it was a struggle for quite a few years until the big break came. So I'm glad I stuck at it because an awful lot of people didn't. And a lot of people also were people do this, had you thought of packing it in, Arthur? That sort of thing. And these are people that you don't really want around you. But anybody listening, you'll get, anybody, if you've got your career ahead, there will be people that will say a version of that. Beware of these people, and also recognize your absolutely core group of people who believe in you, whatever you do. So, and I have those as well. So, and I am that for other people I know too. So they're the ones that you want to go. And some of those that are in my core group are friends from Durham. So, we've stuck together, forever, so that's a long answer to that question, but I'm most proud of the fact that I did. And, I've been an actor now for 42 years, which is
you've worked in all sorts of things as well. I know I've seen lots of theatre credits as well as kind of TV and adverts and everything like that. So what would you say is the difference, people who haven't acted, in that kind of sphere, of the difference of being a film actor or a TV actor compared to being on stage?
The difference is purely, they're very different medium. And even though I'm best known for television, I mean, this will sound odd, but I was never really comfortable doing it for that whole time. I used to feel quite what we call wooden, and I didn't think I was very good. Whereas I've always been very relaxed on stage, and stage live, this stuff has always been my favorite thing. That's what kind of got me going. And it still is to a certain extent. But as time has gone on, I mean, you get better at things, really. You just sort of work it out. And now I'm really comfortable being filmed. I used to get terrible nerves just before they said action, and often because when you're in a theater, usually, the auditorium is dark. People, you can't, there's people out there, but you can't see their faces. So you're in this sort of bubble. And a lot of actors are quite introverted and shy. This may surprise people, but they really are, and I'm one of them too. I feel in control in that space, and it's a buzz, and the live and the reaction and all of that. And also, it's a controlled atmosphere there, where it's unlikely somebody from the audience will get up and say, "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing? That's terrible," or something, because they don't, because they're in a crowd of people. They won't do it. I mean, they may get up and walk out, but they won't. Yeah, you sometimes hear the sea band, but they may just be going to the loo. You don't know. But that's what I mean. But filming, there's a horde of people watching you work. There's the cameraman, the camera assistants, the director, producers, makeup, wardrobe people, and masses of people. And on a big film set, there can be up to 50 people just watching you do your thing. Maybe you're in a scene with 2 people, I used to find that so intimidating. I used to imagine, because you can see them, and even beyond, where you just have to switch that off and concentrate on the person you're with. And I used to imagine they were going, "Oh my God, look at him, he's crap," or something. But they're not. They're just doing their jobs, But it took me a long time to just, get rid of that worry about what other people were thinking and realizing they're not thinking about me at all. Quite likely, they're thinking about what they're doing. They're doing their job, So, but now I'm comfortable with it. I did a very nice part in the series Father Brown, which is on in British television. It's on in the afternoons, but it's a really kind of old-fashioned BBC type, filmed on location production, set in the 40s or 50s. And I absolutely loved it. It was a really good part. And throughout, I had 2 weeks filming. And I know, it was like, where were you when the Brexit referendum was? Well, I was there doing that. That's what I was doing in the Cotswolds. And I just loved every minute of it. And I felt really comfortable. And I thought, oh, after 40 years, I finally feel I've cracked it. But I don't know. Who knows? And then, so but I think it brings up another question, because I think that certainly with things like photography and whatever, some people, there's an expression called the camera loves someone. And we all know people, the camera loves Julia Roberts, the camera loves, there are various people you can think of, models and, but actors, where they just shine through, they've just got whatever it is they have. And I don't know whether I have that or not, but I think I have presence on stage. I mean, 6'4", it's hard not to, but it's what you do with the 6'4". But on television maybe I do, but some people have it without even trying. They have screen presence, and it's it, and that's why they're always in demand. So there we are. That's a long answer.
No, it's interesting. It's really interesting. 'Cause I know, so going back as well to kind of your training and things, what's the kind of difference then between a university where it's a bit of a free-for-all, compared to the kind of the training that you went to at the drama school? Because I know some perhaps potential students always think, do I go to university, or then do I go to drama school, or do I do postgraduate course? So what?
I think now you could if people reckon you're good enough and you've got that sort of if you do have if your talent is sort of validated by enough people, then you can just go straight to it. But the difference is, from when I was doing it, is that back in the 70s and early 80s, you had to be a member of the union Equity. You couldn't, which was what they call a closed shop union. There's sort of no such thing now. And there was a sort of catch-22 about it. If you weren't an Equity member, you couldn't work, but you couldn't work without an Equity card, union card. But in practice, what used to happen is every year, Equity gave a certain amount of membership cards, and you were in competition, all those coming out of the drama schools, to get one of those. And then once you got one, worked, and you couldn't work on television straight away, for instance. You had to do 40 weeks. Yeah, you had to do 40 weeks work in theatre to be able to then get a full union membership. And that meant you could be in the West End, you could be on television, do film. Well, I got a job doing theatre in education, which lasted for 52 weeks. So I got my full card in one go. So it was a year's work, and I just did it all in one go, which was very good. But now anybody can be an actor, because there's an awful lot of people who have, for instance, been amateur actors all their lives and retired, and are just going in and doing work, sort of adverts and whatever like that, or other stuff. I mean, I've worked with people like that, and that's fine. It annoys me in a way, though, because I do think the other side of it is training is training, and it gives you a professional head, and that's the reason I wanted to go to drama school, to feel like a professional. I wouldn't have known what to do. But the other thing is, and how does it differ from, say, acting at Durham? In itself, it doesn't, because when I became one of a group that seemed to be leading things at Durham at the time. And every generation coming up will have those, the leading lights. Well, I was a leading light, so that I had that to go with. So that was confidence building. But every stage that you're at in education, you feel this, this step up, and you think, oh, am I going to, make it in this next stage? I can remember feeling, every stage of my education at schools, infant to junior school. Ooh, this is where this is going to be. And then you cope that. I went to grammar school. That's that's going to be hard. Blah blah blah. University. Whoa, everybody's going to be so intelligent and observant. And you find, well, actually, not everybody is that. And I can cope with this. I had the same nerves going to drama school. I thought, this is where, they separate out, okay, I've been invited in, but everybody's going to be brilliant. And they really weren't. There were an awful lot of people I was at drama school with, in my mind, couldn't act at all. And I thought, well, why have you gone? But there you go. they got in, and some people are very good at auditions, and so they audition really well, and so they get jobs, and then there's nothing much there to follow it up. You suddenly realize the thing they can do is audition. So that can often be the case. So, but that was the other thing is at Durham, when one fitted in doing acting, doing plays, often when one was supposed to be writing essays and revising for exams. I mean, God, there's a lot of that going on. So I mean,
don't think any of that has changed.
No, I don't think it has. But nevertheless, it seemed more important at the time, and turned out to be more important to me. And I still got a degree. So, but for me, the luxury of the year I spent at the Drama Studio London was that I spent every day of the week immersed in it and doing it. And that is, by the end of that, I came out with that notion that I was a professionally trained actor. So again, another long answer, but there are no short answers. If somebody, but I'm not saying to someone that you couldn't go from the other. You could go straight in, and these days it's much easier to do that, and you'll learn the job. You do jobs that improve your skill set,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Absolutely, it is interesting, in terms of the kind of the crossover and the differences. I'm just going to check the chat just to see if we have had anyone asking any other questions, because I feel like I haven't actually looked for a while. Fabulous comment there saying it's almost worth having a Durham degree just for this. Thank you, Gareth. Clearly enjoying our little chit chat on a Friday. How sweet is that?
Nice.
I'm just gonna see, because I think I've posted this multiple times, so just apologies everyone listening in, looking, watching. Let me just look around and just make sure I'm not missing anything. Fabulous. Yeah. Oh, well, lovely. One of my final questions for the day is, obviously we've talked about your kind of training and things, and the kind of the emerging actor, and obviously at Durham we've got lots of people who are kind of aspiring that way. Have you got any final tips, words of wisdom for people who want to go into kind of creative industries, if that's casting, if that's agencies, or being a nice person, what advice would you give?
I've got a little cheat sheet because I had to think about this. Whether I can read it. I mean, one is obvious, and they're pretty well all of them are obvious, but nevertheless they're worth saying. Make sure it's something you want to do more than anything else. In other words, is it your absolute passion? And referring to myself, it took me to my third year to discover that was the case. I thought I was going to go and do something geography related, and I thought I didn't want to work in an office. I thought I was going to join something like the Forestry Commission and be out there in the woods. I may still do that, but nevertheless, that was the thing that came to me. And if it's a burning desire, then that's part one of the signal. Don't do it. The worst reason, and I say this again may seem obvious, and I'm sorry if it seems patronizing in a way, but I've been asked this question many times by people that want to go, who say they want to become an actor. And I ask them the reasons, and they say, well, I want to be famous. And I think, really, really bad reason to do it. I mean, you could be famous being a YouTube presenter or do anything like that, Any bit fame, I don't think means much now, and it didn't really mean much to me either. I became famous for a while with this, and it was very odd. There were only 4 channels on television then, and we used to get 15 million people watching us every week, so that was nearly a quarter of the country, which was really weird. So I went from being unknown to my first episode was shown, and then people were pointing at me at the street and saying things. So it's very odd, and it isn't easy to take. A lot of people have asked me or have said, it must be wonderful to be, fill in the blank. It must be wonderful to be famous, or it must be wonderful to be recognized in the street. Well, it isn't really, because any sense of privacy, out in public, certainly if you're that famous, goes. So if you're not able to deal with that, I would, that's not something you really want. Nevertheless, I always knew it could happen. And don't get me wrong, I mean, a lot of people come up and they say lovely things, as have a couple of lovely people in this chat today, which is hugely appreciated always. Everybody likes a compliment. It's not something I seek. But if somebody stops you on the street and says, oh, don't want to bother you, but I just want to say thanks for all the laughs or something, I think, well, that's really lovely. But you can also become a target for other things. People can sort of bend you up, or they can, feel that they've got some sort of power over you and give you a put down or whatever like that. Or we never thought much of your character or something like that. You've got to get strong and be able to handle that. So before you start, you're not famous. So it's I used to watch other people that I worked with that were already famous. I did various shows with people who were famous, and I used to watch how they behaved both on and off stage, or on television, or off, or whatever. And the fame thing had gone to their head completely, and they were sort of bullies. They may well have been bullies. I don't think you suddenly become a bully. I think you've got that within it. But if you've got that kind of pushy nature, it can be, these are the people that are known as being difficult. But I mean, any job has people that are difficult. It doesn't matter what you do. It's just that the acting profession is more public, and people get to know about and talk about it in newspapers and magazines. So you have to be prepared for that sort of notoriety. And also people can make up stories about you that aren't true, all that sort of thing. So go into it with just with your eyes wide open. I did put, if possible, try and have a second source of income ready, or something that you feel that you can do. I know people have got all sorts of second strings that they could do. One I do, which is related, is now voiceovers. So that helps. It doesn't, I'm not yet doing it all the time, and it's not giving me full income. But if you're good at that, that's something. But, in the early days, I used to work behind bars and do and waiter jobs and whatever I could get, and that would just supplement, enabled me to pay my rent. And actors are still doing that, and it's good work. And often you can, but also do that work gratefully as well, because, do it with a good spirit, actually, because I'm still very close to people I worked with, friends that from that time, and we were going back about 35 years or 40 years, and I'm still in touch with a lot of people that I made friends with on that. So they weren't from my acting background at all, but they knew what I was trying to do. So I just think if you're lucky and you can make a living out of it, which I did for a long time, but certainly not in the early days, then you're doing very, very well indeed. Here's a statistic. It used to be 90% of equity members, which is the union members of actors, are out of work at any one time. So if you're working, you're one of 10%. Now I would say, well, of course, nobody's working at the moment, but or hardly anybody. Now it's probably even less than that. So that's how crowded it is. I've sort of touched on this as well. Just practice or be aware. A lot of people will be very keen to give you advice, and again, that goes with whatever career you're wanting to do. Anything. My work as a coach, for instance, which you would think would be do this, do that, which is what a sports coach kind of does, but the kind of coaching I do is quite the opposite. And I would say, it's about what you think, and it's not about what other people think. So I'm good at asking people questions so that they can really sort of focus in on what they think and get clear about that. Clarity is a good thing. But a lot of people will say things like, what you ought to do, or I shouldn't do this. Anything with should or not don't, or whatever like that. You know, there's a lot of kind of wet blanket people out there. They'll throw a wet blanket over your life for whatever reason. You know, they may be jealous of your ambition. You know, maybe it's something they wanted to do and didn't dare, and they look at you, you are daring, and good for you for doing that. But they may, you know, so it took me forever to get used to that, and I used to kind of suffer from it as well. So kind of recognize it when it comes up, and just, you know, have a little voice saying, is this person supporting me? Are they on their side? But also have a few answers back, or just don't engage with them at all. Keep on your focus and your mission. That's the most important thing.
Interesting. Is it because it's a career of a job of up and downs, really, isn't it? And it's
well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people will say, you know, particularly anything. I think the creative industry suffers most for these sorts of things, and they say, you know, you want to be a novelist, and they say, somebody will say, do you realize how difficult it is to get a book published? And yeah, but people do get books published. So, and what are you going to do? Not write anything at all? And or whatever. Or that statistic I quoted about how many people are out of work at one time. Well, that's true. But every now and then you're one of those ones that are in it. And some people are in it all the time. You have to know there are people, I mean, off the top of my head, someone like Olivia Colman, or, you know, you could ditto several people who are just in everything, and they're on all the time, and they're work time, and they're going from this to this to this to this. But they're the kind of what I refer to as in the swim. And then there's people on outside that people have heard of, but they're not working that often. That would be me. And, you know, so I am not in the swim, so I'm not working all the time. And I have a problem in that people remember me from only one thing. That's the problem. They can't imagine me for other stuff, but that's my problem. So I have to somehow deal with that. But there you are. Just what was the question?
Oh, just
we answered it. I think we have.
I think you have. Yeah, advice to budding actors. I think.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that's all covered. Yeah.
But, well, no, another one actually is, you know, because people say, don't judge. You know, certainly when you're starting out, don't judge the play or the thing that you're given, that you're being offered. I did a play. I did a student film for one of the film schools just after I'd done my first year in theatre and education, and I got into this film which paid. I mean, they must have had a lot of money. The parents or something like that. They paid actors, professional actors, to be in this film, and the script was terrible, and the part I played was terrible, and I don't think I was very good in it. But nevertheless, I met a woman in it who, that time, Equity, the union, set up a casting service where sort of the casting business now is massive. But then there were only a few casting directors. And so they'd set up, like, for instance, the BBC didn't have any casting directors then. You wrote directly to producers or directors at the BBC, and that's how you got in. But now everything's done through casting department. But then, so the BBC were, and other organisers, the TV companies, had made an agreement with Equity to give good, you know, and serious and ongoing casting information to Equity, and they had volunteers that were on the phone for a couple of hours a week with this information that you could ring up. It was called Job Grapevine, and it was brilliant. Well, a woman I worked with on that was one of the people that did that. So I met her, and she said, well, I know you now, and I know what you look like, and we've worked together. She said, so ring me, and, you know, if there's something I think you're right for, I'll tell you. I got my first telly job from that, which was a brilliant, brilliant film for television, full of huge stars of the day, which I had 4 lines in, but it was just amazing, who I met, and I met a woman on that who became one of my closest friends. She was a top actress at the RSC, at the National. She introduced me to another person who became like a mentor. This woman who I met on that student film, and the message I'm giving here is it wasn't about the student film. It was about what happened when I did the student film, because I can't remember anything about the student film. But I met this woman, and this woman was the link in a chain that goes on and on and on. And it's been 40 years. I've met so many people through that one connection. But if I'd decided, oh no, I don't want to go and do that, none of that would have happened. That, another avenue would have opened up, but it wouldn't be the one I've gone through. But the thing is, you may be offered a film job for very little money or no money, but go and do it because it gives you camera time for free, and you'll get used to being on camera and see yourself and get feedback and learn a bit about how it's all done. So nothing's wasted. But again, you'll meet other people doing it, and through their contact, well, why don't you get in touch? Oh, you'd be great at something or other. So my motto for my career, which I don't stick to, I'll be the first to admit, I don't always stick to this. And when I do, things happen, but nothing comes from nothing. So if you do nothing, nothing happens. But if you do something will if you take action, it's obvious this, but I often don't do things like this. Yeah, I often don't take action, and I'm trying all these years later to do more. But if you do go and do something will happen, and it'll most likely not be the thing that you imagine will happen either. It'll be a connection, or it'll be something, but which leads to something else. Yeah. Another long
term. I think that is a brilliant motto. I think that is really brilliant. And
but nothing.
Yeah, and kind of the sense of you've got to chase it yourself, and you've got to kind of proactively go after things, even if.
I heard the other one is I used to give. When I was working, because I was mostly, when I was coaching, working with young creative entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs setting up their own business, a lot of design students in their early to mid-20s. And so I used to give them, the ones that I was coaching, sort of quotations that were hopefully inspiring to them. And one of the ones, I can only probably paraphrase it, but it was something like this, which was, everything you want is out there, and everything out there also wants you, but you have to take an action to get it, which is the same thing as what I've just been saying, but it's a beautiful thing. And there was another one, something like, a lion does not sit around all day with its jaw open waiting for an antelope to climb into it. Yes, I thought it was the image. All of them were better. So, but you get the idea there, that you can't just sit there, but it's not going to fall in your lap. So you have to go off and find it. Yeah. So, and I've not always done that. I can be terribly lazy. But there we are.
Amazing. Thank you so much for chatting to us today. I think that's almost wrapping up. Shout out from David Rushton saying greetings to Arthur from Chads. So you've got
brilliant. Thank you so much.
Chadsonian, kind of shouting out there.
Chadzian, I think.
Chadzia.
I don't know.
Apologies, wrong college for me. But anyway, not that we're all still competitive, but haha. Amazing. I think that's it. I've just kind of flicked through on the chat, and there's just quite a few likes and quite a few things. If anyone's got any other kind of questions, I can always try and rattle through them, or I can kind of pass them on afterwards if anyone's got anything burning. But Arthur, I mean, what a guy, the man, the myth, the legend. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Great pleasure.
Well, as a very inspiring actor for generations of Durham and beyond as well, and all of the amazing work that you've done, and the kind of incredible credits over the years in everything from writing to coaching and mentoring and Geography Society. So thank you so much for taking the time.
You're very welcome. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, take care and look after yourself. And then I'm going to try and end this somehow, and I'm hoping we can just fade out, but we'll see how this goes.
I'm going to fade out now, so thank you. All the best, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.